When you go beyond your limits just to keep up, it's not like that's an invisible sacrifice. It's going to show up in your tone, in your attention, in the way that you rush them through it or snap on the way home. Like they know. And that is going to be what they remember. To the Rich and Regular podcast, where we explore life at the intersection of money. I'm Kirsten.
And I'm Julian. And today we're talking about how to avoid overspending when your kid joins a sport.
Lord have mercy.
Youth sports. It is all the rage. We are caught up in the midst of it. And so we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to shout out to W. Darnell from our Spotify crew who left us a comment saying, I really appreciate your fresh perspective on life and money. You completely embody the idea of Rich and Regular. We should. We own the trademark. We should. And I appreciate that to the fullest. The fact that Julian, has never seen Everybody Hates Chris is diabolical.
You right. You right, W. Darnell.
Diabolical.
I feel like I've been swindled.
This is a couple of people have called this out. Apparently it is like my black card is about to get revoked.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me that's not surprised. Wow. Keep on keeping on. I don't know what that means. I need you to reply to my comment. I need some clarification.
Well, I replied to him saying, or her saying, that I was going to make you binge watch it this summer.
I have no interest in watching it.
It's crazy.
But I'm like that with a lot of these shows. You know, it took me about 20 years
problem.
to see Color Purple and all these other things. I just didn't
This isn't traumatic. This is a comedy.
I wasn't avoiding it because of the trauma. I was avoiding it because like everybody was talking about it, so it feels like there's no need to watch it. It's one of those things that are in that category where you know what's going to happen. It's like, why watch it? Anyway, why are we talking about this? It's a little personal. Like we're talking about it because we're caught up in the midst of it. But we also read an article that was really, really enlightening. I also think there have been a couple of really big books that have come out over the last couple of years that have spoken about it. And as entrepreneurs and people who kind of pay attention to these things and obviously are plugged into youth sports and things that are affecting families, it's something that is top of mind. It's something that we know a lot of the people that we are engaging with on a regular basis are a part of, you know, and just even thinking about our own situations, whether it's like summer camps and doing the math. I know this time last year we recorded a podcast where we were talking about affordable approaches to managing camps because summer camps can be really expensive. Our son was really fortunate to be considered an all-star or named an all-star. And so it extended his normal season experience. We haven't gotten the bill for that yet. I know it's coming. I don't know how much it's going to be, but I remember thinking like, wow, like this is a lot. These practices every single day and there's new gear that we needed to buy. And so it is a lot. And, you know, it's one of those things, especially, you know, because since he plays baseball and it's one of those things that for sure has been considered a very pricey sport, and that being part of the reason why a lot of kids in inner cities have not been able to keep up because it's just the price is rising. And it's true. And, you know, we've lived it, but we're fortunate that we've been able to navigate it. And so we're sharing some perspective, both based on research, but also our own realities as parents who are in the middle of it.
Yeah. Kids sports is really a parenting identity minefield. Like you want to support them. You want to make sure that they have a good time and that they feel supported. But it's really easy to lose control of your spending in the name of trying to be a good parent.
Oh, yeah.
And as I've transitioned into this baseball mom persona, like all of the algorithms online have started to adjust. Like I'm the person that now people are sending reels to. I know people have been doing that to you, like sending you baseball.
That's how I know I'm doing something
reels.
Right. Anytime a friend sees anything baseball related, they want to make sure you see this. I was like, yes, I'm aware. Juan Soto signed a $765 million contract. I just want to make sure you knew because I feel like Bo's on his way.
Yeah.
I'm like, I wish. I hope.
Well, baseball mom humor is a lot about the long days and the cost of things. Like there's lots of jokes about your kids swinging a car note or wearing a mortgage worth of equipment. And
that's real.
It's real. It is real.
It's not an exaggeration.
Yeah. Even when we lose and, you know, our bats weren't on fire, like the boys didn't hit well, the coach will make a joke about there being about $4,000-$5,000 worth of bats at the table.
Use
and not a single ball going into the outfield. And he's right. Like, if you do that math, it's like, dang, we all spent a couple
And
$100.
that's just the bats. We're not
And
talking
that's
about
just the
all
one
the
they
other stuff.
brought.
That's just the one they brought. You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it is an issue. And we are a bit biased because of the three most popular sports, which are soccer, baseball, and basketball. Baseball is the most expensive, according to the article that we read, which I'll link in our show notes. But yeah, it is very, very pricey, and it's gotten pricier since we were kids, or even since just 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Again, this is really relative to all sports, but we're speaking from a first person perspective or first hand perspective from a baseball kind of point of view. But it's important for all because I mean, to your point, like it's not just baseball. Baseball may be at the top in terms of expense, but every sport has their own version when it comes to some of these things. So if you were to break down the categories, or just create some categories, if you will.
Because that was the new thing, was the categories of costs.
Well,
You see that registration fee and you're like, oh, okay, like $140. Great.
there are categories, or there's tiers. Like I'm not even
Yeah.
getting into all that stuff.
Yeah,
Like we're
yeah,
just
yeah.
saying, like in general, because I think a lot of people just look at the initial cost, or what I'm calling like the sign up cost, the
Mhm.
initiation fee, and say, I paid $300 for my son or my daughter to play baseball for the spring or the fall or whatever it is. That's just the cost to get you in the door. Like
Mhm.
that's the beginning. So yes, there is that, but this is where people get to complaining because they realize that, oh no, that unlocks the next level of things that you are going to have to buy and or consider buying, or you will just admit that you're going to put your child at a disadvantage, which likely means they're not going to do that good. And then it just kind of has
Yeah.
the tendency to spiral out of control. But those three categories, the first one I would say are sign up costs.
Mhm.
The second I would say would be gear and equipment. And so if we're talking about baseball, this is everything from bats, plural, bats, because I mean, he may or she may need multiple training bats, bats in games. There's your glove, and I mean,
Mhm.
glove could be your batting gloves. It could also be your actual mitt that you're using
Mhm.
when you're fielding. Two completely different gloves. Cleats. You are likely just going to need one pair of cleats, but I'm just going to go ahead and say, as a parent of an 8-year-old, and I'm sure anyone else with a child out there can agree, don't think for a second. I know you feel like you wore shoes for a year. The max, you're going to get 3 to 6 months out of
Oh,
those
yeah.
cleats, max, because their
Yeah.
feet are going to grow or they're just going to get completely torn up. Uniforms,
Mhm.
there's going to be the actual team uniform. Sometimes that is included in the sign up cost, but again, it just kind of depends. They may have separate gear for workouts or maybe
Yeah.
specific tournaments. They may have their own or a different set of
Or a
uniforms.
home and away
A
uniform.
home and away uniform.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Socks.
Yep.
Gotta
Yep.
have team socks.
Exactly. There's backups, which is just like backups of kind of everything,
Yeah.
like you may only be required to buy at least one pair of, let's say, socks. But if you have back-to-back games or
Mhm.
back-to-back, tournaments, you're likely going to need more than one. So everything else that we just said, you're not going to need more than one pair of cleats, but you might need multiple sets of uniforms. And then there's just all the accessories and maybe training equipment. So all of that is just
Mhm.
one category. Like that could technically be two or three, but I'm just going to say gear and those costs are just one thing. And then there's just the social slash lifestyle costs. I would say this is the third one, which tends to be the surprise, the one that sounds like a good idea, but you can't really prepare for it. You just need to accept that it's a part of the lifestyle of being on this team, being a part or member of this community or this league. So that's everything from team meals, whether
Mhm.
it's a big celebration after a game, it could be snacks. So like after every tournament, there's usually a little sign up genius. Shout out to all the moms who navigate
Mhm.
sign up genius and say who's going to bring snacks on this day at this game, that game practice. If your child is participating in different tournaments, there are costs oftentimes associated with those tournaments, not just a registration fee, which can or may not be included in an initiation fee. It just depends. With that, there may be parking fees for every single day that you're pulling up. With that, there's going to be food or other fees. Sometimes there are other things like hotel rooms that you may need to coordinate or book on your own. That's not going to be included in your initiation fee. At the end of the season, unless you really don't like your coach, the team mom or whoever is going to reach out and say, hey, we'd love to get something nice for coach because they've spent so much time developing our kids. And certainly you agree that we've had such
Yeah.
a great experience. And so they want something and they like these things. Oftentimes there are other little gifts that go out to the team mom who's been coordinating all the other things off field, right? They deserve something, flowers, chocolates, all kinds of stuff. Photos. People want to commemorate this moment and get like an official team photo. Sometimes that's individual. Sometimes that is something that is a part of the league, very similar to like school photos or like
Mhm.
yearbook photos. Lastly, there's like fundraisers, right? Because like the fees are never enough to cover everything on the field or everything that's in the
Yeah,
program.
get ready to buy your
And so
popcorn or your
now,
raffle ticket or
yeah, yeah, like all the parents are coming in and there's like creating gift baskets and there's the
Yeah.
raffles and all those things go towards supporting the league and it's all about the kids. And so, yeah, things get really pricey and out of control for the sake of the team and our children's development really, really quickly. And again, that's just for standard or average kids,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not saying that to this, but if you have a kid or several kids who is pretty advanced or you want them to be advanced, well, then above that, you've got this fourth category, which is more like this development, right? And that could be personalized equipment, it could be coaching, it could be subscriptions to software. Like we do or have done all of the above. Like we don't
Lessons,
do,
camps.
yeah, we don't do lessons, and we've absorbed that into our own sort of timeline and cost. Now I basically am all of those things, but we've been there, right? From
Yeah.
coaches to lessons to subscriptions to academies to all this stuff. And so, yeah, it's like you're easily talking four figures. And,
Yeah.
like the lesson, the moral of the story here, don't look up such and such. I want my kid to play this sport and think that whatever number you see on that form
Yeah.
or that screen is it. And they're not going to tell you or give you an estimate. Well, you should expect it to spend 4x that. Just you can tell Rich and Regular told you.
Right.
Like that's a quarter of it
No, four figures is right. We're going to get to the survey
for
that
sure.
explains what the average parent spends on the primary sport. But I want to reinforce that none of this stuff is really mandatory. Some of it is, like when you talk about specialized equipment, but it is socially normalized and layered. And so you feel
Yeah.
this pressure to do it so that your kid isn't left out and so that your kid feels included. And you create this trap for yourself where it's either keep up, like spend the money and just keep up and say, oh, these kids, complaining about it at happy hour, or you try to avoid the guilt of like saying no.
Yeah.
And so it's really tough. And that mix of emotional tension has created a multi-billion-dollar industry,
Mhm.
a $40 billion industry. And that's sandbagging because that's not counting what cities spend. That's just counting American family dollars. American families spend $40 billion on youth sports every year. And so, according to the Project Play study, this was a huge study that was looking to determine how much an average American family is spending. Family spending on youth sports has increased 46% over the last 5 years. So, from 2019 to 2025, it has increased 46%. And the average US sports family is spending $1,016 on their child's primary sport as of 2024. So,
Primary sport.
yeah, I'm gonna get to that. So for the first time ever, they actually asked parents to estimate the amount that they spend on that same child's other sports. And that accounted for about $475. So $1,000 on their primary sport, 475 on their other sport or other sports,
Yeah.
and you're looking at $1,500 annually for that one child. Now, obviously, if you have multiple children who play more than two sports, they have two primary sports, whatever it is, that number is much higher. But $1,500, I know there's some people who are out there like, I wish. Like, there's a lot of demographic data that shows that's just the average. That includes rural households who spend less than $1,000. That includes urban households who spend more. That includes high earners who spend even more than that. And so it's an interesting math problem.
And I think part of the challenge is that people look at kids playing a youth sport the same way they do as like an after school program. And that's not, pound for pound, it's not the same thing. Like it's not just an activity. A youth sport does come with a long, long list of other things. And again, this is the critique. This is why certain sports tend to fall out of popularity, baseball in particular. And I won't spend a lot of time on this, and maybe we'll even link to it. But we're pretty passionate about our son's development because he has shown such great potential and such great interest in that sport. And one of the things that we're especially paying attention to has been the decline of Black players in baseball. Unfun fact, as of last year, the lowest percentage of Black players are in Major League Baseball
Mm,
since I want to say the 1970s or 80s,
that's
right? It's
crazy.
somewhere around 6%. And so there's all these conversations online about, why this is happening and why baseball has been basically stripped away from urban areas, which tend to have a higher concentration of Black players. There's all this other sidebar conversation about overinvestment in Latin American countries, and basically said there is development. They're just not focusing on Black players. All of that to say, there are all of these factors at play that affect why people are willing to spend so much, because they realize that they kind of have to, but they also realize that their local area just unfunded or defunded some of these
Hmm.
things, right? And so you kind of have to bear the full cost of their development and their training. Whereas back in the day, there used to be a city program. There used to be more parks that had equipment just laying around for people to actually use, and those things just don't exist anymore. All of these things were touched on in the article. One of the other things that they called out was that a lot of this was also in response to COVID, which, I can understand, right? You go from a world where you were just not encouraged to be outside at all. I think a lot of parents started to realize that aside from the deterioration of social skills, there was a deterioration of physical skills, because we went from a world where kids were outside and playing and being more physically active to having a couple of years of critical time where that development was taken away. And
Hmm.
so, you take a dog and you don't walk it for 2 years, you know what I mean? Like, you're gonna have some physical issues. And I'll be honest, we saw that with our kid. Like, we joke about it, but like he, obviously all kids are born like baby giraffes. They ain't got no legs underneath them. But we saw after a couple of years that's like something was wrong. Like, he just lacked legitimate coordination that I felt like I had. And I realized, well, yeah, you played probably 20 times more games of tag than
Right.
he did.
Right.
You played a lot more outside, and he just didn't have that. And so, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is an opportunity, right? Like, I saw it as well. Like, his entire cohort is going to be underdeveloped. Let's race ahead. And so, all of those things I think go into why a lot of parents, not just parents like us, but a lot of parents, I think, have doubled down on the amount of, dare I call it, an investment in their
I think that's a
children.
fair word.
Okay.
If you treat it like an investment, like if you are actually doing your research, actually expecting a return, actually divesting from things that don't give you that, which to your point about local rec leagues,
Yeah,
there's a lot of conversation about how this has become the have and have nots. But what's missing from that conversation is that a lot of these rec leagues are underfunded,
for sure.
and it makes it very difficult to compete as a viable alternative to something that is paid, curated based on tryouts, not open to everybody, especially when there's such a big skill differential between children. If you put your kid who can throw a ball 50 miles per hour in a league with a kid who's just learning baseball, it's just
Hmm.
something he's trying this semester. Last semester, he tried golf, didn't like that. So now he's trying baseball. He's going to hurt himself.
Oh, yeah.
And that kid's not going to want to play either. And so, this dynamic of trying to figure out where skilled players can go and have coaches who can bring up the bottom so that they can continue to play together is tough, especially when it's all volunteer run.
Yeah.
Like that, that's the other dynamic.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I want to dive into a little bit more of the details in this article because it was really, really interesting. And I will speed through some of this because there's just a lot in there. So here's one, like, even among the youngest cohort of children. So, like, we're talking about ages 6 through 10, which sounds ridiculous. And I would have felt the same way like a couple of years ago. But even among that age group, ages 6 to 10, parents are spending more than $1,000. This is as of 2024, and that's per child per sport.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it's not anything that I think is crazy. That's just like the actual cost of what these programs are and all the tools and equipment, some of the things and categories that we mentioned. But it starts that early,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of those things that is enough to make a lot of people say, well, if they're not that good, well, we're not gonna do this. But like, good luck being able to identify whether or not your kid is the next whoever it is
Or being the
at
parent who
age
says, no,
6,
you can't play a sport,
even though
which,
all of your friends are doing it. And
yeah,
yeah.
that's where everybody is. Nobody can come to your birthday party because they got a game.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Nobody can come hang out on Friday night because they're playing flag football.
absolutely.
Again, it's a tough spot to be in as a parent as you think about, how you're going to manage this logistically and financially.
Yeah. When we look at the demographics, this is where things get really interesting. White parents spend almost twice the amount on their child's primary sport than Black parents. Parents who identify as Hispanic or Latino reportedly spent nearly the same amount, a little over $1,000, as white parents on their children's primary sport. And rural parents reported spending far less money on sports, around $924. I'm willing to bet a lot of people would be surprised by that.
Really?
That Black people would not be spending nearly as much. I think we would have thought that we were over invested in that area, that they would have been at or near the top. That would have been my guess.
I can understand that. And this is just a reminder that there are levels to everything.
Yeah.
We might be over invested based on our household wallet,
For sure.
but they're still spending twice as much more than us. And this is why everything is contextual. Like, doesn't mean that we're not spending, doesn't mean that we're not overspending, but it's levels.
Yeah. There's a really interesting line here with respect to the size of the industry as a whole, which earlier you quoted as $40 billion, which we know is kind of sandbagging. I'm just going to read the quote here. It says the $40 billion now spent by families on youth sports is twice the amount of cash flowing through the NFL.
That's crazy.
Right?
Which is the most lucrative.
Which is the most lucrative sports league in the world, and does not include the public spend by schools and municipalities or that of private facility operators and sponsors, which is crazy. So in aggregate, the total size of the youth sports economy is likely significantly higher than $40 billion. Again, reflecting back on our early baseball days, I remember realizing that there was a lot happening, like not just in terms of the coaching and the formulation of teams and tournaments. There was VC money flowing into this stuff. In terms of tech, which I found really, really interesting, like the ability to stream and watch these games. There's entire sets of equipment. Like, if you remember the journey that we went through, just trying to find the right amount of equipment to be able to record the games, because not every camera, like, of course you can use any camera, but not every camera was meant to withstand that. They have AI tools now, like specifically for soccer, that
apps for
track
stats.
the actual ball. They've got stats, that are loaded up in apps that get funded, or I say funded, but low key, that feed is what I meant, but it is funding something. Like it is, when I tell you it is not a game, it is an industry that your child is a part of. And those who are in it know, and we are 100% in it, which is part of the reason why we are talking about this as well. And, it's not nearly as simple, I think, as people think that it is. It's not just a game. For some people, it's just an activity. For other people, it is arguably the equivalent of like, what do they call these, pitch showcases or pitch competitions or something like that? Like it's a weekly pitch competition to get your kid identified for the purposes of feeding into some system, which is a literal system from youth through college all the way through the pros, or it is whether or not that child has what it takes to attract sponsorships. We can unlock all kinds of money, like not even just like NIL money, but like just general brand sponsors. Like I've said this before, would not surprise me at all if our son is earning thousands of dollars in the next couple of years if he keeps up what he's doing and he has parents like us who are capturing that content and being able to negotiate on his behalf. And he's not like some top 10 kid in the country, you know what I mean? Like he's good, but like he doesn't have to be in order to accomplish what we're kind of seeing he is able to do. And that's what I think is at play here, that some people realize and other people are just kind of ignoring because they think it's extra, but they're going to be on the outside looking in my opinion.
But even for people who don't have ambitions for their kids to go on and achieve great things athletically, a lot of people believe that sports are just another institution of learning. It's another form of school where you are learning how to work as a team, you're learning how to lead, you're learning how to manage your emotions, you're learning how to deal with high stakes situations. And they see it as worth every single penny because that's the only place that pressure is still allowed to be applied to kids in a way that only sports can do. That coaching, that, raising your voice or adding an expectation and accountability, and there being like a winner and a loser at the end.
Your
it's
coach
one
can
of the
talk
few
to
places
your kid in a way that you would look at the teacher like, hey, hold on now.
Right.
right? But you'll let the coach can
That's
do that.
100% true.
But if Mrs. Johnson dares to raise her
You better
voice
not
at
yell
you,
at my baby like that.
tell him to what? It's hot outside. He don't need to be running laps. You know what I mean? But you'll let your coach do that. It's an
Yeah.
interesting cultural, social dynamic there. But it's really, this is where we are.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to the practical advice part. So, one of the things that we recommend is just foundationally create a seasonal sports budget as a family
Mm-hmm.
and communicate it to your kid. And make sure that some of that is in cash. Like, make sure that they have some of that budget every week as you go to these different fields or stadiums or courts, wherever you're playing, so that they can do things like buy things from the concession stand, or if somebody's selling a bracelet or, whatever tchotchke they got, he or she has their budget and they can decide whether or not they're going to use it for that. In our house, we decide to spend based on what actually matters to our family and not just what everyone else is doing,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of pressure there. And so for us, it might be investing more on high quality gear or going to a local game. We're very fortunate to have a minor league team and a major league team and a basketball team and 3-on-3. We got all kind of leagues in Atlanta. And so we might spend more on experiences and quality gear than, say, team merch or sweatshirts that he's going to grow out of, or, things that are branded with our division. And the goal here is not to be cheap, but it is to be very intentional and to set the expectation with your kid that there is a limit. Like, this isn't the only thing that we do with our money.
Yeah, for sure. Another tip here I would add here is just making trade-offs on purpose, not just random trade-offs, but like make these decisions, or as many of these decisions, around what you're going to skip versus what things you absolutely want to make sure your child is a part of in advance. So, we are, and look, I could do a whole podcast about this. You're not going to be able to sell me on some pictures.
He sure can't.
You can't. Nobody can sell
and
me.
Bo's little feelings be hurt every year.
Whether it's a yearbook or the team photo, I'm not buying. I'm not spending $60 or $75
on a portrait.
It's not in 2025. I don't understand why people are still doing this. I've got 1,000 pictures of my son on my phone right now. I can enhance him any way. I could change the back. I could do whatever I want. No photographer is going to shoot my son in a way that makes me see him in a way that I ain't seen him before. Like, I'm just not interested. So yeah, skip the pictures, dude, but invest in the better glove, right?
Yeah.
The thing that is going to give them an edge, or give them, in some cases, just more confidence in their abilities to actually perform. Because to me, the investment on that thing, it could last you significantly more versus, wallet size photos. And, like, who cares? Do people even put photos? Like, I am shocked every single time I see the pamphlet come. I'm like, I can't believe this industry still exists in 2025. So skip the photo package, dude. You don't need that. But, invest in some equipment or extra training, something to actually give them the confidence that they need. But little stuff like that, I think just go ahead and mark those things out when somebody says it, and then say, all right, I am willing to spend a little bit more on something that I think you're actually going to get a return from. And I think if you express that price awareness or sensitivity in advance, I think your kid can understand. Hopefully by next year, our son knows not to even ask for it. He'll see his friends with him.
He's still going to ask just because, the folders get handed out, and
he didn't get
a folder,
That's
and
fine.
he doesn't get to take the picture because we are not buying them. And so he does ask, but to your point, we can remind him, like, oh, you remember the new glove?
Correct.
Same money.
Would you rather have a printout of your face, or would you rather go to your favorite restaurant? Like,
right.
Pick one.
Yeah, we also choose those yes moments in advance. Like, we really try hard to stop impulse spending or, buying something out of guilt or peer pressure. So we already know he's going to get a new bat, new cleats because of how fast he grows. And because we know that in advance, we can look for deals. We can invite him to the process. We can show him videos that compare one thing to another. And so he's really invested in the equipment that he does get when he gets it, because, he's watched YouTube videos on it and he knows that we've waited to buy this thing. The other thing that we do is, especially for parents who have fast growing kids or kids who change sizes mid season, is we make sure that we swap, borrow, or buy used gear as much as possible. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. There are team chats. I'm sure y'all know there are group chats, or if you're on Game
I bet
Changer.
you a lot of people don't know. We didn't know at first. I think that's part of the reason why we wanted to do this podcast. I mean, it was something that we learned after a while. Like you join whatever league or community it is, and then you start asking around, where'd you get this or where'd that kid get that thing? And then somebody eventually says, well, you can also just get a used one.
Yeah.
And so you realize that there's a Facebook group or something like that. But it's not something that is always communicated up
No.
front, like during the registration, because they're aware of your price sensitivity. They don't
Yeah.
lead with it.
During the registration, they're going to give you a 20% off coupon to whatever
Right.
sponsor, whether it's
That's
Dick's
true.
Sporting Goods or something local or, Academy. You're going to get a coupon during registration. But if you talk to different parents or you notice that a parent has changed their child's equipment, they got a new helmet, you can straight up ask, like, what you do with the old one? Because they might either say, oh, you can have it, or we're saving it for his little brother, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
At the end of the season, there's a lot of leagues that will donate their lost and found. Lost and found is another great place to check to see if there's anything
You
there.
ain't
Like,
lying.
don't take somebody's stuff. But if you notice something's been sitting there and they give that final
I'll
warning,
tell you exactly. That's exactly it. Don't feel bad about it. You're doing them a favor.
you're doing them
Actually,
a favor.
like there was catcher's gear. Catcher's gear is notoriously expensive.
Yeah.
And when we found out that there was a last day where if no one had claimed whatever was in lost and found, I thought about going to get it, but it was too big. So I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? Somebody else is going to come and get it. I was looking at it, I was like, somebody's going to come and get this gear. Cause it's like, that's $300 that some kid just left there. And I couldn't imagine like losing $300 worth of gear and not coming back for it. But nobody came back for it and they just left it there. And so I'm confident somebody picked it up. But
There was a full stroller, like a full, not no like umbrella stroller,
there was
like
a lot
a
of
nice
water
stroller.
bottles. I don't
There was
expect
a
you to
lot of
take
water
somebody's
bottles.
water bottle.
There were
But
nice leather gloves there,
yeah,
like Marucci and like Rawling gloves. There was a lot of stuff.
our son lost his baseball glove the first day of practice of last season. And it was one of two places. I went back to the place, checked their lost and found. There might have been 25 gloves there. His was not one of them.
Mhm.
Right. And I was like, well, you ain't find your glove, but you can grab one of these. I mean, there was just so much equipment. So honestly, like just get it, black out the name if there's a name on it, or get your
Yeah.
little magic eraser or something like that. But even if that's not the case, another quick little tip, I apologize because my brain is racing here. Let's say your kid is 8 years old. Befriend somebody that's in the 9U
Hello?
section. I'm telling you, like
Preferably
whoever's in
somebody
the
who ain't got no
9,
little brother.
yes. Find somebody in the 9-year-old, 10-year-old and say, hey, what's your plan to get rid of that bat or to get rid of that thing? They're going to pass it down. And then you may be doing them a favor. They may just say, you know what, just take it because I was going to buy them a new one
Yeah.
anyway. And so all you'll have to do is replace this part or spray in there or something like that. And boom, problem solved. Like I'm telling you, you do not have to buy new anything. Like either go to Lost and Found, figure out when that last day is, or befriend somebody who's in the next level. And I guarantee you, somebody's willing to give something away for free.
Yeah.
Problem solved. So.
Facebook Marketplace, Play It Again Sports, local nonprofits, all of those things work. We have donated bats to kids in 7U. We've given away cleats. We've given away other bats.
Yeah.
Like, I now know not to throw away equipment just because he grows out of it. And I think that's really important for parents if we want to get our arms around this $40 billion increasing price point industry, is to remember that just because your kid is done with it doesn't mean that it's done in general.
Yeah. We just sold our son's bat for the first time we've sold something.
Right.
And it ended up going to one of his former teammates who was a younger kid and happens to be in the age bracket below him. So again, these things are not hard to do. Just befriend people. You can have to find somebody to give it to, find someone who can give it to you, or you end up selling it to someone and it doesn't feel nearly as icky. Last thing that I would recommend, and I would imagine if you are a active parent that's involved in like buying school supplies, you kind of know how this works. But typically, whatever equipment or gear or uniforms, those things are oftentimes presented in bundles. And they do that to just make life easier for you, but that does not necessarily mean that it's the most affordable way to do those things. And I don't think people realize that. So the pants, the jersey, the belt, the socks, all of those things can actually be purchased individually. Just try to find out what that SKU is, and then at least do yourself, one quick little search to see if you were to buy it individually versus buying it directly from the recommended supplier. Because a lot of times you don't have to do that. Like if it's
Mhm.
not like some specialized contractual program, you don't have to do that, but you do have the ability to buy some things individually and end up saving some bucks, or just like saving a bunch of money in general. And lastly, I would say just get clear on the expectations up front from the coaches or whoever the team parent is. Like, ask them in advance, what can we expect if we're doing this? And that's helpful because,
It
we
is.
just had a barbecue kind of situation, and I was on the other end of the spectrum. Like, it was something that we really wanted the kids to do. I would have been willing to spend more for a better experience. And that's not to say that we didn't have a good experience,
Yeah.
but it was so good. It was kind of like, oh man, had I known, you know, we would have been willing to spend more. And I
Yeah.
think there was some overly price sensitive people who were just trying to make sure, because they felt like, we've been asking the parents for a lot, but because the kids had such a fun time, it was like, man, had I known, we would have went all out because we
Right.
had such a great experience there. But it's little things like that, like just building that rapport, talking to people and getting them to share with you sort of these upfront ideas, I think really helps to make the opacity of these kind of costs a little bit more clear, and so that you can plan in advance for them and it not be as disruptive to your budget. So yeah, I mean, those are some of our best tips. If anything else comes to mind.
Well, I will say, to make sure, like, pushing back a little bit on bundled offers or expectations or pressure, you can start that as early as the uniform conversation. A lot of those decisions are made at a coaching level or amongst just the team moms.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel like having matching team bags is important for everybody, you can ask the parents, like, do y'all care if we don't
Right.
have the same exact bag or the same exact, padded pants or whatever? Like, I just was talking to one of our neighbors whose son started tackle football this summer, and she's having to buy all of this stuff because he's transitioning from flag. And she's like, they're selling padded pants. I think that's what you call them, padded pants, at the practice, but those are $70. And I saw these at Academy for only 40. So I'm asking his coach if we can just get these. And they said, yeah, they don't care.
Yeah.
So just, don't feel like you're being a nuisance by putting your budget and your priorities first.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, kids don't need the premium version of every single experience.
No.
What they need is consistent adults who can show up for them without resentment, who are present, who are emotionally available, and who aren't secretly simmering about the money that they've spent to be here, who aren't associating their kids' performance with like how much it costs the entire time.
Yep.
Because when you go beyond your limits just to keep up, it's not like that's an invisible sacrifice. It's going to show up in your tone, in your attention, in your, in the way that you rush them through it or snap on the way home. Like, they know. And that is going to be what they remember.
For
It's
sure.
not going to be that $40 hoodie. It's not going to be the matching socks. It's not going to be that ridiculous necklace. It's going to be how angry you always were.
Look, your expectations for a $500 dinner or a $500 hotel room are very different than your expectations for a $200
Yeah.
room, right? And so if you go all out and you buy your son or your daughter all of those things, that's exactly where your expectations go. And to your point, it tends to lead to tension and like unwarranted expectations that you put on your kid. And it was like, oh, I expected you to run faster, or I expected you to jump higher, or I expected you to hit farther. And you're not doing that. And you're mad at the bat and you're mad at them and you're mad, just mad. So like you have to just place limits on those things, because again, once you do that, you just like level set expectations and also move on to the things that are most important. Because assuming your kid is good, like you want them to continue to do that, but they're not going to want to do that if it's not an enjoyable experience for them. And that just unlocks a new level
Yes,
of
another set
frustration.
of
So
challenges.
yeah, like chill out on buying all the things, subscribing to all the things, and try to keep it as fun and as loose as possible. And we'll see y'all at the draft party. Hopefully, fingers crossed, man. I get it. I'm wrapped up in it myself, but I also understand that it's a 10-year journey.
It is.
And there's a lot of money. $1,000 today. Like, don't assume that. All right, well, $1,000 every year over 10 years. That's not that bad. It's a lot more.
No. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
whole lot more than that. Plus time and early mornings and late nights. So it's a long, long journey, man. Take it easy and try not to get sucked into the hype of it all.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So, I didn't even say thank you for listening. Let me start there. Thank y'all for listening to another episode of the Rich and Regular podcast. If you like what you heard, then swing on to the podcast. You messed me up.
You could have said slide on over.
Slide on over to your favorite podcast player and leave us a 5-star rating or review, or drop a comment below to keep the conversation going. As I was saying before I showed my gratitude, I would love to hear where y'all stand. I mean, this is one of my favorite debates these days, is talking to other sports parents and talking about putting expectations on kids and the amount of spend and how we justify one thing but not another. Like, it's just a really good conversation, but keep it cute. Don't be rude. You know what I mean?
We will catch y'all next week.
We'll see y'all next week.
See what I did there?
Storyline. Yeah, you did. And you didn't do it. You didn't do the weed.
I don't need to.
If you like videos like this and want to see more, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications.